You're listening to A Little Too Quiet. It's the Ferndale Library podcast, and it's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. And my name is Jeff Milo, and I am so excited today. We have local musician Dan Cafferty on the podcast.
Thrilled to be here, Jeff.
Thanks for coming in to the library.
My pleasure.
On a gray, wintry, cold, icy day.
Just how I like them.
Yeah, you have to if you're a Michigander, which we're going to talk about. But we are looking forward to a concert that Dan is going to be performing as part of a Songwriters in the Round. We're going to talk all about that. And it was way back in April of last year, actually. We had singer-songwriter Mike Ward here at the library because this library hosts monthly concerts. Dan came up and Dan, you're so full of energy and you had so many ideas. And of the ideas you said, you were like, I also facilitate Songwriters in the Round. And I was like, that we've never done anything like that. I'd love to work toward that. And now here it's finally happening as a reality. So we're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk about how you got into that. But let's just ask you about you and your background. Tell us about, your life story and how and when you started playing music and how and when you got your hands on your first guitar and all that kind of stuff.
So this is a 6-hour podcast, right?
Yes, let's go.
Well, I am native to this area.
Cool.
And I'm actually from Allen Park, Michigan. So I grew up downriver. And I'll let you guess where I went to college.
I can see there is a maize-colored M on the sweatshirt.
I've worn it every second since we won the game.
Yeah,
it becomes a small problem in the shower, but
And Allen Park, you probably saw the Lions practicing. You're a football guy. Yeah,
I did. So I started playing guitar actually around 8th grade, and I've actually never had a lesson. I'm self-taught.
Wow.
And my origins into guitar, I had an older brother, 4.5 years older than me, that played guitar. And we used to have a lot of family events, and he would play Bob Dylan songs, and he was self-taught as well. But, I loved the attention that he got and everybody singing along. So when he was not home, I would sneak down to his room, take his guitar, open up his books, listen very carefully as to for when he comes home. And I would learn Bob Dylan songs and learn folk songs and things so then the next time there's a family event, I'd be the whiny little brother. He's 4.5 years older than me. And I would say, let me try. And my parents would eventually let me try. And I'd play it. And I was astonishingly suspiciously good for somebody that never played guitar.
How did that happen?
So, because I was sneaking in his room, of course. And my brother knew something was up. So one day I got caught.
Yeah.
So I'm in his room, which is in the basement of our house. I got a Bob Dylan book out. I'm turning the pages, and all of a sudden I feel a really strong tug in the back of my collar, which is my older brother, and the screams of "Ma!" So a big fight breaks out, and it was mediated that Christmas because my mother got me a guitar as well.
Okay.
The exact same kind of guitar he got. So that
right.
was kind of the origins of it. When I told you 6 hours, I wasn't kidding.
No, right. But it does sound like you were drawn to that energy of, and I did want to ask about folk music because I know that you touch into a lot of different genres, but anyone who sees an acoustic guitar, they think folk music, but it does seem like you were kind of turned on by that energy of everyone kind of gathering around and listening. And you might not always get that with punk or rock, but folk has that intimate quality, traditional ballads, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The energy and the fact that it makes people happy and people are singing. So I was definitely drawn to that. So I played got an electric guitar in high school and played in some bands in high school. Learned a lot at U of M. There was a lot of people that played. People would go to the Diag in the center of campus and sit around and play.
Classic.
So we had a lot of fun there. I played in some post-college bands for about 10 years, mostly in the downriver area. And I was a little bit light in music for years when my kids were small, but about 20 years ago, I really got much more into the writing portion of it and performing my stuff as opposed to covers. And I had a pretty large portfolio of music at that time. And so I'm part of a songwriting organization as well. And I started making records probably 2009, and I'm currently working on my 5th album, and I do this full time.
Nice.
So I had another career for many years, but this is my life now.
Nice.
And,
tell us about some of maybe your other influences beyond Bob Dylan, or even just other people that you really like to cover early on.
Oh, I have so many influences. Oh, God. Love Steely Dan is my all-time favorite band. Love Steely Dan. The orchestration, just
very intricate.
The interesting and unusual lyrics. Steely Dan is one of the things that Donald Fagen will say is that they've never really written a love song before, and I'm kind of not too far from that.
Okay, sure.
I think Ricky Don't Lose That Number is probably as close as they get to a love song. Yeah. I love Steely Dan. I love jazz, traditional jazz. I now have a 6-piece jazz band that plays here regularly, the Hot Rod Cherries. So I definitely love traditional jazz and blues. I like Stevie Ray, of course, the Beatles, the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, a lot of classic rock folks. I grew up with Dan Fogelberg and Bob Dylan, and a lot of the singer-songwriters from the 70s. So I have a lot of different influences. Paul Simon, certainly.
Oh, sure. Yeah. How and when did you start diversifying? Because I'm just being devil's advocate. I think that popular perception is that you can't get much farther away from folk than jazz. It's like a whole spectrum jump.
I've just always had, I've always been diversified from the beginning, probably from my father, because my father had a diversified interest. Mm-hmm. He really liked jazz and folk. He wasn't as much of a rock guy, but of course, I had a lot of rock influences from my peers growing up in the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
You know, rock. If you look at all the top 10 songs, were so many of them were rock songs back then, which is of course no longer the case. So it was the dominant pop music of the time.
Sure.
So I certainly had those influences, and I played in a lot of rock bands, never heavy metal bands, just more classic rock type bands. So I certainly have that influence as well.
What do you think? If we haven't covered enough of it, I would just make a statement in lieu of a question that says it does seem like you're really drawn to songwriters.
Absolutely.
To put it simply.
Yes.
Storytelling, or even just interesting ideas, a lot of effort put into the lyrics.
Yes. And that's one of the things in the last 20 years, being part of a songwriting organization and really studying independently on my own songwriting, is the whole storytelling aspect. You have, much like a short film or a short story, or you have a small amount of time to really set up the characters, have a story, and have it come to a conclusion. But the challenge in music is to tell that story. You've got 3 minutes to do it. Right. And you may have 150 words to do it. So you have to set up the characters and set up the story and develop any type of suspense where somebody wants to hear what happens at the end. You got a very short amount of time to do that. So it takes a lot of craftsmanship to do that. And
you like that challenge?
I love that challenge. Yes.
But what about jazz? What drew you to jazz? I mean, and even Steely Dan in general often has the word jazz floating in their orbit, right? So talk about that.
Certainly my dad had a lot to do with that. My brother also, beyond learning initially on Bob Dylan, was really into jazz. So I really absorbed that from him. During my high school years, he looked very down on the rock and roll that I played because, that's just this lower level music. Right. And you got to play Al Di Meola, or you got to play John McLaughlin, or some of the jazz greats. Otherwise, it's worthless. That was kind of his, and I didn't necessarily see it that way. But I've come to have an appreciation really for all forms of music. The one area where I didn't have a lot of history with was country music, because that wasn't played much in my house growing up. And of course, as I mentioned, growing up when I did, rock was really the dominant form, or dominant genre. That then eventually, as you may remember, although you're much younger than me, but there was the crossover country where it wasn't true country. It was a little bit of rock into it, and it became really pop music. Sure. On a national scale. I have developed much more of an appreciation for country music. So there's really not a genre that I don't have a great interest in now.
Yeah, well, certainly, thanks to my parents, Johnny Cash was always played around the household a lot. I think that's always a good gateway to the country world, I think.
Boy Named Sue.
Yeah, exactly. That was my mom's favorite. But let's talk about Songwriters in the Round and maybe just kind of explain how that kind of flows for people who've never been to one of those before.
So Songwriters in the Round, it is my favorite format. It's really wonderful, especially with the great people that we're going to be having here on February 18th. Yeah. Is from a performer standpoint, it's just nice to be able to have somebody on stage to interact with, and for the audience to see that kind of interaction. And Steve Taylor, who is one of our performers on the 18th, him and I have done a number of shows together, and we have a tremendous amount of fun.
Great.
You know? And you can't have that same amount of fun when you're up there by yourself. So from a songwriter perspective, it's enjoyable. And when you're having a lot of fun, the audience has a lot of fun with you. So I've done a number of these. It's part of the community that I'm a part of. It's something that's pretty commonly done.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's really interesting about putting a group together is you want to have some diversity to the group that you have in every way. So the styles are all a little bit different, and when we go from one performer to the next, you're hearing a different style and a different take, and that's one of the things that we'll see on the 18th. Is our styles are all a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely.
But complementary.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Emily Rose and Michelle Hill will be here, and I don't know. Tell me about your feelings on Michigan. I think that establishing or having a family here is obviously going to keep you here. You can obviously just comment in general about what keeps you here in Michigan, but I was just going to comment in general about how subtly and perhaps slightly undersung or unnoticed is that there's been just an amazing, I'm not going to even just say just folk scene, but just a singer-songwriter scene here in Michigan. Even if we're going to have C. Taylor, you, Michelle Held, Emily Rose, but like we've mentioned Mike Ward. There's Audra Kubat out there. There's Chris Bathgate. There's so many amazing songwriters here, which I'm sure you've seen. You've been in that galaxy. I don't know what's literally in the water around here.
No, it is. First of all, I love the state of Michigan. Yeah. I rep the state of Michigan at every opportunity. I think this is a phenomenal place to live. I don't ever want to leave.
Me neither.
Is my wife going to hear this podcast?
Yeah.
I don't want to leave. She likes warmer weather. I actually like the change of seasons. I have no trouble with the cold.
Sure.
I'm not in the least bit. Even though I'm not a skier, but I am a hockey player.
Sure.
But that's one of the things that Steve and I, when we play together, we go back and forth on because I actually like the winter and Steve doesn't. So we make fun of each other a lot.
That's great.
And I actually have a song that I'll play in the 18th that's a direct response to one of Steve's songs about the winter.
And that's what you get to see is the dialogue between the artists who are up there on the stage. But, we have... obviously, libraries are great places for this, but we also have a lot of people know the Arc in Ann Arbor, or they know 20 Front Street way up north here in Oakland County. There are, and there's always just so many great smaller venues and coffee shops that are dedicated to that wonderful, I always say, intimate experience where, the amps aren't exploding or anything, and there maybe isn't, a Motley Crue-esque drum kit on stage. It's just a chance to really engage with the artist. And I think those are wonderful opportunities. And it just seems like there's a really healthy amount of them around the state. And I'm really happy for that.
There really are. Yeah. It goes on, and it's not just in this area. There's so many festivals around the state that have just spectacular players and great audiences. I played at the Earthworks Festival.
Oh, nice.
If you're familiar with that, in Lake City, and Emily played there as well, and Audra played there as well. and Dick Siegel was there. If you're familiar with Dick Siegel at all,
yeah.
So that was just a fantastic time and great audiences, and people that are songwriters like myself really appreciate audiences that want to hear and venues that provide the opportunity to perform original music. And I thank you for what you do. Yeah. In music, there's a lot of gigs in music that I call them wallpaper gigs. Okay. It's where you're there to play, but nobody's really listening, and if they are listening, they're listening for little tiny clips.
Yep.
And when they're listening, they want to hear something familiar.
Right.
You know, they want to hear.
They want to hear "Blown in the Wind" or whatever. Yeah.
Yes, they want to hear something, a cover song.
Yeah.
Because they're not really listening.
Right.
So I call it a wallpaper gig because you're part of the scenery. You're not really. You're nothing different than a picture on the wall. You know, you're providing an atmosphere.
There may be a television in the corner.
Yes.
Competing.
Yes. Oh, I've been there before where there's and I'm the world's biggest sports fan, so I shouldn't complain. But if I'm up there playing and everybody's turned to the side looking at the screen, it's not very much fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, artists like me really appreciate when venues provide that opportunity and we can reach an audience that is coming there to hear you play and to hear something that they haven't heard before.
Sure. Yeah. And sometimes an artist will get here and they will be at first and then they adjust, but they're almost overwhelmed by how attentive the audience really is because they have been at too many of those other gigs. And when they get to the library, they're like, oh my gosh, you're all actually listening. This is a new experience for me.
Yes, some people do get nervous by that. They feel better if nobody's really listening. I'm actually the opposite.
Yeah, I was going to ask,
opposite.
Did you have stage fright early in your career, yada, yada? Were you good on stage? What was that experience like for you?
It does take time to get on stage and to get a comfort level on stage. And I know a lot of people, it takes time to do that. And you have to learn songs to the point where they just come out of you and you don't really have to think. They're just there. You have to get to that point, and it takes practice to get to that point. But like I said, there are some people that they're uncomfortable or they're more nervous when everybody's listening to every single thing they do. I am the opposite. I'm more likely to forget a lyric or make a mistake when nobody's listening.
Interesting.
Because
you're in your own head or something, I guess.
Because I know that people aren't really listening, and my mind starts to go, I got to take the garbage out when I get home. In the middle of a song, you know, and then wait a second, where am I again?
Right.
So, and that doesn't happen when you're looking audiences in the eye, you know.
So you kind of like that pressure.
Yes, absolutely. It's what we kind of live for that, you know.
Yeah. And I guess tell me about more of any of your other projects that you've been working on that we haven't touched on yet, or even just some of your recent albums, things like that.
Great. Well, one of the bands I'm really proud of is the Hot Rod Cherries. We are a 6-piece jazz band. So a saxophone, a trumpet, a harmonica, myself on guitar and vocals, an upright bass, drums, and a keyboard. So we play probably about 20 gigs a year, and we're a monthly event at Michigan Wine by the Bottle. So am I allowed to bring up outside
Sure,
things?
Of course.
Okay. Michigan Wine by the Bottle, the second Saturday of every month. So we play traditional jazz, Gershwin, Cole Porter.
Nice.
That type. And we just have a blast, and we have a nice little following, and a lot of fun. I've always wanted to do something like this, and this opportunity came along. And two of the members of the group are part of my songwriting organization. And so we have a lot of fun together, and so does our audience. And we play traditional jazz, but we also will bring in some popular music and do jazz versions of popular music.
Awesome.
We do like Use Me by Bill Withers and Superstition and things like that. We actually also do Rock This Town by the Stray Cats, you know. So we're not too heavily jazz. And when we play at Michigan Wine by the Bottle, there's no cover. So we have a lot of people that will come to see us and say, my God, this is free.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to pay $25 to go to
Sure.
I don't want to mention any other
Sure.
locations, but so it's popular. They do allow outside food, and there's a pizzeria next door. So a lot of people will order a pizza and just come in and order wine and watch us play. So that's a lot of fun.
Well, I also think that once those audiences get into those spaces that are offering a free show, they are much more appreciative. And I think that opportunities like that and opportunities like the library, it shouldn't be overlooked that they're wonderful opportunities simply to meet your local artist, which I consider, you know, even if you're in Troy or if you're in Wyandotte or what have you, if you're in Southeast Michigan, I consider you a neighbor. I think it's wonderful opportunities to come into these venues or a library and, you know, enjoy the show. And then after, come up and chat with the artist, literally get to know them. Do your own podcast with Dan on the spot, you know, like.
No, we love that.
Yeah.
Okay, we absolutely love that. I know at the Michigan Wine by the Bottle, I usually try to talk to everybody afterwards. And, you know, we're not rock stars. We don't have handlers or anything.
Right.
We're not bothered by the paparazzi.
Right.
We're totally fine with chatting with everybody. We want people to have fun and to come back.
Yeah, exactly that. Anything? Oh, just tell us about your maybe your most recent album that you were working on.
So I'm currently working on my 5th album, and one of the things that I've done with my albums is I use the recording process. I sort of look at it as a kind of a canvas for a painter that I'm going to try to do as much as I possibly can with what I have available to me, which is a recording studio to produce the best product that I can. I tend to make, it's funny, we talked about influences.
Yeah.
People talk, when they hear my past records, they've said it reminds me of Steely Dan and the Eagles, which is funny that those are two of my,
Right.
I don't think any of the songs sound like any Steely Dan, but I do like horns.
Sure.
So I have horn sections on 2 of my first 3 albums. I usually have the wide genre of music that I'm interested is reflected in my records. Sometimes it doesn't sound like the same person from one track to the next. I will do some instrumentals. I will also have a rock tune. My first three records, I put one heavy metal tune on each of the records, and the same record will have like a jazzy blues. So it's an odd mix. I did have
It's eclectic.
Eclectic, yes. I think I shouldn't say
That's the
odd.
word.
Odd is a negative word. Eclectic is much.
It's in the
better.
synonym family.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's much more positive.
Yeah.
So, I did have on my first record, actually, I did have a blues song that got a lot of airplay. So actually, national airplay on XM radio. So that was fun and unexpected. And the first time that I heard it on the radio with my own ears, I'm driving my son back from swimming practice, and what he was used to hearing is me putting the CD in that had the rough mixes, and I'd be listening as I'm driving down the road on what I need to fix to finish it. So he was very accustomed to me doing that as I'm driving him around. And so on Bluesville XM radio, they says, now here's a song from the latest album from Dan Cafferty. And my first thought was not, I'm going to be on the radio. My first thought is, oh my God, this guy has the same name as me. I hope he's good. And then the song came out, and it was me.
And it's not rough.
It was, and so I said to my son that, hey, listen. And he hears the song he heard before, and I had to take the CD out and say, this is not my CD.
That's right.
This is actually on the radio. So that was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun. So those were my my first 3 albums. The one that I'm making right now, the reason I described how I handled the studio is what I'm doing in the studio is not easily reproducible, especially with me and an acoustic guitar if I have all these horn sections and things. So with my last album, my next album, the one I'm working on now, I am playing, recording songs that I play live a lot more frequently, and a lot of the ones with humor in them and a lot more stories in them.
Great.
And I had this issue when I'm going through the booking process is, well, let's hear what you have. And I have these recorded albums, but they're very different from the songs that I play live and how I play live. So I'm trying to do a better job of capturing how I play live and having the songs with not so much instrumentation, and also to have more of the humor songs.
Nice. Yeah. Emily Rose is big on that too, or just having a bit of that energy. But I guess wanted to ask more, because since he seems to be a close friend of yours and contemporary, Steve Taylor, I was curious how you guys met or how long you guys have known each other.
So I haven't known Steve for that long.
Okay.
We've sort of known of each other for a while. We had a common friend, a local musician from Royal Oak, Maggie McCabe.
Okay.
So we had this common friend. I had talked to Steve periodically. Steve is a graduate of Berkeley in Boston, so he's very well accredited musically. And so Steve and I actually got paired together at the Trinity Theater independently. We didn't work it out.
Another great venue.
Yes, I played there quite a bit. It's a special place to me, the Trinity House Theater. And so we had a lot of fun together. So Steve hosted at Berkeley Coffee. He used to host a Songwriter in the Round. So he's invited me to do that on a few occasions.
Excellent.
And we've been to each other's gigs. I just saw him play a couple weeks ago. And
Nice.
So we have a really good rapport together. We have similar senses of humor, and we have a lot of fun on stage. So,
Wonderful.
So he's got his band, the Steve Taylor 3, and he plays out a lot too. He's really a hardworking musician.
Nice. And then I just couldn't resist. Do you have, hopefully not too cheesy of a question here, but do you have any advice out there for aspiring songwriters or anyone who's really just getting started and may or may not be experiencing frustration or just ennui in general?
Well, my first advice is to join a songwriting organization. There's plenty of them out there. The one that I'm a part of is called Songwriters Anonymous, and we actually meet monthly at the Trinity House Theater.
And you just work on it. It's a craft.
It is a craft.
Gotta work.
And also, it is something that my friend Dan Hazlett says it's a lonely job writing a song. You're just you there working on it. And
into the ether, and you just don't know. Yeah.
And Songwriters Anonymous is a non-critical, we don't criticize each other's songs. We support each other because we all have a common interest. And that support can be really important. And plus, you hear what other people write. We have sessions and educational sessions. Sometimes we teach each other things that we've learned about songwriting. There's also many retreats that are out there.
Oh, yes.
The Lamb retreat I've never done a retreat personally, but a lot of people do them. And that's in my organization, a lot of those people met each other through retreats. So the organization I'm a part of is free. You just show up. That's great. We do a show every year. And we've had many bands that have come together from knowing each other. But more importantly, it provides you support, and you can get advice from people if you want it. But
that is the whole thing. Whatever it is in the arts, whether you are, I know you use canvas as a metaphor, but just if you're a visual artist and you have a blank canvas, or if you're a writer and you want to write a book or a song and you have a blank canvas, it is lonely, and that's daunting. That's intimidating. So I think it's really great. Yeah. Anything before I ask you my wrap-up question today? Do we leave anything else untouched about your story, or anything else we didn't cover? Because I know you have a lot of pots on the stove when it comes to.
I have other bands.
Yeah, of course, right.
So
let's shout them out.
So I have a band called All Grown Up, and we're primarily a rock and soul band, and we play a lot of festivals. We play Arts Beats and Eats every year.
Excellent.
We play Taco Fest.
Oh, yeah.
And we do Winter Blast and things like that. And So we do mostly covers. We do some of my material, but for the most part, we're also busy, and I'm busy with I'm split so many different ways that we don't really have a lot of time to really nail down some of the originals, but we have played some of my originals. I also play as part of a 3-part sort of a power trio, which is kind of we'll do some old 3-piece rock songs like Cream, exactly. We do a bunch of Cream songs.
Power trio, and then Cream just comes to mind.
Yes, that's it. That's it. So, and Hendrix. So,
I was gonna make a what was that curmudgeonly drummer Baker in the Cream? Anyway,
Ginger Baker.
Ginger Baker.
Yes.
Hopefully, your drummer's a little nicer than Ginger
Yes.
Baker. I was also gonna ask, hopefully, again, not too cheesy, but what you. And maybe this answer's changed over the years, but currently what it is now, like what do you just enjoy most or find most fulfilling about not songwriting? Because I feel like we've covered that, but performing, especially when you have an engaged crowd. Like, what do you enjoy most about that kind of thing?
Just the fact that making people happy.
Yeah,
I mean, music is life. It's sort of part of being alive, and when people are into it and you can do something that actually makes somebody's body move, that's enjoyable,
Or maybe even just pluck their heartstrings a little bit, get them to ruminate. And anything else in general that you're looking forward to about February 28th here at the library?
I just can't wait.
Yeah.
I have 2 or 3 songs that I've written specifically for that event that I'm really looking forward to playing.
Well, I'm looking forward to the winter song that you're going to throw at Steve.
Yes. He hasn't heard it yet.
Yeah.
But
I know you're on Reverb Nation. Anywhere else people can find you or get in touch with you or anything else you want to shout out anything else?
Reverb Nation, all of my records are on YouTube.
Nice.
So if anybody wants to hear them for free,
we'll have links in the show notes.
They can go on YouTube and look up Dan Cafferty. A lot of times when you look up Dan Cafferty, the former singer of Nazareth is Dan McCafferty,
right?
Who passed away not too long ago. But sometimes he comes up when you search. But you scroll down a little bit, I'm there, and I have probably 40 songs on YouTube, and I'm available in a lot of pretty much every other place. SoundCloud and CD Baby, and there's a lot of different places to.
Well, just like your sweatshirt implies, you'll always find, if you search Dan Cafferty, Michigan, you'll probably get the right songwriter.
You probably will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dan, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Really appreciate what you do, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Folks at home, info in the show notes, including links to find more music from Dan. But mark your calendars for Sunday, February 18th, here at 2 o'clock. Walk right on into the library. Just like that other jazz event, it is free. Walk right in, get comfortable, enjoy 4 amazing songwriters interacting with each other, performing, interacting with you. Come up and say hello. I think it's wonderful. The show is brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. This podcast is brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library, and we thank them and we thank you for listening. And shout out to John Duffy for giving us intro and outro music. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and maybe tell your friends about this podcast. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks for listening.